How's it going, everybody? Just as a forewarning, it's storming here, and the lights flickered, I don't know, about 20 minutes ago, so the power might go out. I hope it does not. But anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and joining me again on this fine Wednesday. Thank you, Jersey. Appreciate that. So, as you can tell by the title, we are going to do a part 2 of what we started last week. So, this is on this series. You can play guitar. So, for those of you who are maybe new, and if anybody is new, hello, Bruce. Welcome. If anybody is new, let me know where you're watching from. Hello, Rick. Anyway, so what this is this was just a series of just some simple ways to kind of get into playing. We did some stuff with songs and chords a couple of weeks ago, so we started working with a lead guitar series last week, and so that's what we're going to continue tonight. So there is a link in the description where you can download the tabs for what we're going to be going over. So what we're going to be going over is some new techniques, and then we're going to look at combining them with the ones that we looked at last week. Oh, Vancouver, Washington. Nice. Yeah, so if everybody wants to grab those tabs, then we can get right into it. And if anybody was here last week and after you got, maybe during the week working on this stuff, a question has arisen. If you have a question, let me have it. Or if you just have guitar-related questions in general, it doesn't have to be about what we're talking about necessarily, but I'll do my best to get to all of those. So, yeah. And if you like what I'm doing, do me a solid, be like super cool if you'd hit that thumbs up button, because that helps to show Guitar Control I'm doing a good job and that you are liking what I'm doing and I can continue to do it. All right, so when we looked at this, when we started this last week, we went over the first position of the pentatonic scale, and we did all the examples were in B, but they're all movable, and everything that we're going to be doing today is movable too. And the reason that I chose B is it's just kind of it's a neutral place. Your arm's not down this way and you're not cramped up this way, just to kind of give you, if you're kind of a beginner, kind of give you a kind of a more neutral position, so you can get lots of range of motion and be able to get all this stuff. So that being said, some of these licks, you learn them here, and then you can just move them to whatever key. Some of them, they might be more difficult to play in a higher key or a lower key, just based on what I just said. All right, so in the last one, we did the scale. We did a couple of different like sequence exercises, exercises / lick ideas, ascending and descending, and then we looked at picking and hammer-ons and pull-offs, and I don't remember if there was anything else. That kind of seems like that might have been it. But anyway, tonight what we're going to do is we're going to just continue that, and the first thing we're going to look at is slides. So, and again, these are all in B, and they're all movable because there isn't any open strings in any of this stuff. So again, we're working out a B minor pentatonic. So like 7th fret on your low E is a B. So we got 7 10 7 9 7 9 7 9 7 10 7 10. So everything we're going to be doing is going to be out of that shape. All right. So if you look at your tabs for the first example, it just says slide. And if you can see on there that it's showing on the tab, it's showing the 7th fret on your D string. And then it's got the line connecting it over to the 9th fret. and it says SL. So that means slide. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing the note on the 7th fret, and then we're going to slide to the 9th fret. It's as simple as that. Now, if you've never really done this before, or haven't done a lot with it, one of the things you got to make sure is that you're pressing down firmly. You don't need to press down to the point like where it's gonna, like you feel like you're trying to saw your finger in half with a cheese grater. You just need, or a cheese slicer. You just need to have it pressed down enough that when you slide, it doesn't like mute out, and you also don't want it to be like where you're really dragging. So what it is we want to get the same effect we would get if we just played 7 to 9. If we went 1 and, we want 1 and. In this case, I mean, it isn't always going to be eighth notes, obviously, but in this example, it is with eighth notes. So for this little sequence we're going to do here, we're going to start on 7 and slide to 9. Now, you'll notice that I'm using my 3rd finger. And now the reason is, if we were playing the scale, when I get to that note on the 7th fret of the D string, it's my 1st finger, and then the 9th fret is my 3rd finger. But since we're sliding into this note, we're going to use the finger that we would use to play that note within the scale. Now, it's not going to be like that 100% of the time, but the vast majority of the time, in my experience, that's how it is. So we're going to hit that, the 7, slide to 9, and then we're going to go to the 9th fret on the G string with our 1st finger, and back to the 9th fret of the D string. Now, you notice when I move to this note, I remove this finger. I mean, I may not take it all the way off, but I don't want the notes to ring over. Not that that doesn't sound good, but that's not what we're doing for this example. But that being said, when you're using all of these ideas, when you're just taking them and trying to do your own thing, like improvise over a backing track or something, stuff like that is really cool. That's a double stop stuff that we would do in maybe a part 3 of this if there's enough interest in that. All right, so in this case, we're just doing his 8th note. So it's 1 and 2 and. Then on the downbeat of 3, we're starting on the 7th fret of the G string, and we're going to slide to the 9th fret and back to 7. So in this case, it makes more sense to use my 1st finger because that's where I'm coming from. Now, on this one here, you'll see that it shows 7 and then has the line, and it's going on an upward because that's indicating that we're going up in pitch. We're going from the 7th to the 9th fret. Now, if you see right after that on the 9, now it has a line going down to 7, and it's all, SL, so it's a slide. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick 7, slide to 9, and back to 7. And then finally resolving here, ending on the 9th fret of the D string. So the whole thing is going to be like this. It can be, it's a very, very simple thing, but it can still end up being a lick, not necessarily what you would call, like, oh, this is like a guitar lick, but it's a phrase. It's you're saying something, and depending upon what you're playing it over the top of, backing track or someone else just playing chords, it can sound differently depending upon what chord it's being played over. And again, this is stuff that we could cover in another thing. Right now, we're just trying to kind of get just some of the basic techniques down for playing lead guitar. So I'm trying to aim this at people who are total beginners and that people that maybe already have some experience. So there might be parts where you're like, I already know how to do this or whatever. Just bear with it. Everybody had to start somewhere, so let's give everybody a chance to kind of get caught up together. Hi, David. Oh, England. Sweet. All right. So that's our first exercise. That's just a just a regular slide. All right. So the next kind of a slide we're going to look at is what is called a slide from nowhere. So if you notice, if you look at the beginning of that measure, it shows the line like like a slide, like it's like pointing up and it's pointing to 9 and it says SL underneath of it, but there is no number before 9. So what that is, what's called a slide from nowhere, meaning that you're going to slide from an unpredetermined point. Um, but I'm going to show you how to do it. Like there isn't a predetermined point, but you kind of want to make your own predetermined point, and I'll explain why here. So how this works, it's like starting off the same way as the first one did, but instead of going, whoops, we're going to go. So what we're going to do is that since the note that we're coming from isn't listed, it isn't. It's because it's a slide from nowhere. I'm going to just go ahead and start on the 7th fret. So the difference between a slide from nowhere and then the regular slide is that instead of picking 7 and sliding to 9, I'm going to pick 7 and slide to 9 simultaneously. Whoops. You hear the difference? Now I could start on the 5th fret and it would do the same thing. I could start on the 1st fret. But the reason that I just go to 7 is one, there's going to be, you're going to find out that there's like a million licks and sequences that kind of will do that will staying inside this pattern, but they're going to have notes sliding into and out of. So it just makes it simpler. I can my left hand, my fretting hand doesn't. It just kind of knows everything's going to be kind of based around the same general vicinity for the key of B minor anyway. And again, if we played this in a different key, it would be the same idea, just in a different place. So like let's say we're going to do it in G. So G is on the 3rd fret at the low E. So the scale pattern would be here. So it would be 3 slide to 5. Or if it's a from nowhere. Okay, so we're going to do this slide from nowhere, and we're doing this, and it's right on the downbeat of 1. Then we're going to go on the and of 1 to the 7th fret of the G string, and then back to the 9th fret. So it's very similar to what we did on the previous one, but the difference is that we're starting with the slide from nowhere. And then on the first one, we did that slide from 7 to 9 back to 7 on the G string. Now we're going to do another slide from nowhere to 9 and then down to 7. So I'm coming from, now I'm gonna, whoops, I'm gonna use my 3rd finger, or excuse me, I'm not gonna use my 3rd finger. Let me think just a second. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna use my 1st finger. Now the reason being is because as soon as we do the slide from nowhere to 9, we slide right back to 7 and then back to 9 here, and then a slide from nowhere to 9 on the G string to make it resolve. Now I'm doing that with my 1st finger. Now, depending upon what you are planning on doing after that, you may do it with your 3rd finger. Because that might leave you available to, do whatever. But maybe you are going to come here and then you're going to follow the chord changes. Again, I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. So each thing you do, there's going to be you're going to somewhat have to make these decisions on which fingers you're going to use here and there. Now, it isn't like you're just going to do this all the time, but at first, especially when you're you're just kind of figuring it out, you're gonna you're gonna have to decide how you do it, and then how, depending upon how that comes out, you may end up making decisions based off of what you think is easier, what you like the sound of, or just the way you like to play, the kinds of licks that you like to do. And that's what makes everybody different. That's like the cool thing. So that being said, you always have to kind of take it with a grain of salt when an instructor, including me, like tells you like teaching how to play a song or a solo from a song or something, and I'll say use this finger, use that finger. That may not be the way the original artist did it. It's just the way that made what seemed logical to me or to whoever you're learning it from. So that being said, you'll undoubtedly do the same thing. You'll kind of come up with your own ways of doing stuff. Like, what do they say? There's more than one way to skin a cat, which is just an absolutely terrible saying, but it's true, I guess. All right, so that is a conventional slide, and then a slide from nowhere. Now, there's another one that I didn't put on here, and that's actually a slide to nowhere. So those are things you'll see in songs where maybe they'll do at the beginning of it. They'll do like have this like note sliding out like that. Where they'll start up high and come out of it. So it's the same idea. If it was, let's say that I had actually remembered to put the example on there, and it showed the 9, but the line was on the other side of it and it was going down, but there was no note it was connected to. That'd be a slide to nowhere. So when I do those, as you slide down, you just kind of, and then I use my picking hand just to mute the string, and then go into whatever comes next. Usually those are things to start a riff, like something like that. You do see them in like solos and things like that. But yeah, that's how you do that. I'm not exactly sure how I managed to miss putting that on there as an example, but stuff happens. All right. So does anybody have any questions about that, about slides? Or just, like I said, guitar related questions in general. It doesn't have to necessarily pertain to what we're doing tonight. And while I'm just kind of kicking around a second, waiting to see if anybody's got any questions. If you like what I'm doing, it'd be super cool if you hit that thumbs up button, leave me a comment, all that kind of stuff, because that really does help helps with that whole YouTube algorithm thing. But mostly it just helps them to know that I'm doing a good job, you like what I'm doing, and I can continue to do this for you. And as usual, this lesson is brought to you tonight by the Canadians. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to take the slides that we just learned, and we're going to combine that with the hammer-ons and pull-offs that we did last week. So our first example here, and this is section C, combining slides with H and P. H and P is hammer and pull-off. So what we're going to do is we're going to start on the 7th fret of the D string, and I'm going to use my 3rd finger. I'm going to slide to 9. So this is just kind of like the last thing we looked at. We're going to hit this and slide to 9. Then I'm going to go to, well, actually, it's exactly the same thing, this part of it. So on the previous one we did that 7, slide to 9, back to 7. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to do 7, slide to 9. Then we go to the G string. We're going to go 7, hammer to 9, pull to 7. So then we're going to go back to the ninth fret of the D string. And when I move back, I'm going to move my first finger back too. So that way I can be ready to do a pull off to 7 and then slide to 9. So we've got. Oh my gosh. We can't wait. Okay, I keep forgetting to do the pull off. That's what I'm doing wrong. Okay. Man, that is like really weird. This is like not how I play. So when I said earlier, just little segue. When I said earlier that like that you'll like someone will explain and they'll say use this finger or that finger, um, whereas they different people play different, might use different fingers. As you go through and you learn these things and you the things you pick up, like we said, it might be that you things that you just like the way they sound or they're easier for you or whatever, and they're the first things you implement. Uh, the ones that you don't like as much or whatever, and you don't end up using, when you do go to do them, it can kind of trip you up, and that's exactly what's happening to me right now. Is because this is a sequence that I normally would not do. So doing the this is normal, but then coming down to this string and pick and pull and then slide. That's just not how I normally do stuff. So it's kind of tripping me up. So starting on the D string, 7 slide to 9, and this is like 1 and 2 and 3 and whoops and 4 and. There we go. Now, if you compare that one to the last example we were looking at, like I was saying, it's like the same thing. But we're playing the same notes in the same time, but we're using a different technique. So, you know, an A is an A is an A, a B is a B is a B, whatever. By changing the way that you execute playing it makes it sound differently. So it's I like to think about it as like dialogue. If you were reading a book out loud to somebody or to a group of people or something, you might make your voice sound one way. Like let's say you're reading it, it's a conversation between two people. So you might talk with a certain timbre of voice for one person and a different for the other person. If there's a comma, you'd pause. If there was an exclamation point, you would say it, louder or whatever. So it's kind of the same thing. These techniques, they're the same notes, but it sounds a lot different to go than to go, even though that's the same notes played in the same time. It changes the delivery of it. So you can right now you don't know which one to use or whatever, and I realize that, but you practice all of them. You might, like I said, you might start off with ones that you think are easier to play or ones that you like the way they sound or whatever, and you just you want to try everything. You go to a buffet, and maybe you try a little of everything, but it doesn't mean you like everything. It doesn't mean you're going to go back for seconds for everything. You're going to you're going to pick, oh, I liked this and I like that. And that's kind of how this will be. And it's something that's going to be probably changing and, ongoing changing through your whole life. My entire style, like the way I play, just when I play for myself, is way, way different now than it was 10 years ago. Uh, Not the thing that, oh, I've gotten better. I mean, I like to think I've gotten better, but it's just it's just completely different. My interests, when I play, the things that I hear that make me smile are different than they used to be. Hello, Crit. How's it going? All right. So yeah, so that's combining slides with hammer-ons and pull-offs. So. All right. Now on the next measure, it's basically the same thing. It's just I've moved up a set of strings. So if you remember last week, if you were here, and if you weren't, you can always watch that as a rerun. You can still download the tabs and everything. Oh, we're happy you're here too, Crit. We did some of the examples where we played it on the D and the G string because again, kind of neutral because it's in the middle of the neck, but it's also, or excuse me, like the middle of the fretboard this way. It's also what a lot of players call the sweet spot. They really like that. I agree. I like the D, G, and B string mostly. That's kind of my go-to, my bread and butter kind of spot. But as you know, when you play the scale, when we go from the G to the B string, the pattern changes. Instead of being 7-9, now it's 7-10. So you're going to do the same idea. You just have to put that extra half step in between there. So it's good to practice doing that. So that way, when you go to do it, it's not, like difficult, or you haven't practiced it as much and the other parts are easier. Playing on these strings is easier. And it is for that aspect of it, I guess, because it's just the same shape. And now the shape's different. So we're going to start on the G string, start on 7, slide to 9, to the 7th fret on the B string, to hammer to 10, pull back off to 7. Then we're going to go to the G string, 9, pull to 7, and then slide to 9. Whoops. So it's exactly the same thing, but again, it's just so that you have an example that's on, where it's a different shape. So any of these examples, they can be played, these are based on 2 strings at a time. So it could be done across any of the strings. I mean, you could go all the way down here. I never really do stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just not my, it's not what my fingers decide they want to do when I go to play. All right, so that is combining slides with the hammer and pull offs that we did before. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? All right. So this next part, that first part, I kind of got down to it, because this next part I want to spend a little bit of time with, because this is arguably the hardest thing to get into with, noodling around with, lead guitar, playing melodies, solos and stuff. This is like the hardest technique to get into, arguably. In my opinion, it's if it's not number 1, then it's definitely number 2, and that is bending. All right, so with bending, there are different. I mean, there's a ton of different types of bending, and we are not gonna. You suck at bending. I don't think you quite suck at bending, Crit, but it's a technique that it doesn't just come overnight, I mean, I'm sure there's some people that it comes to easier than others, but it's still something that's pretty difficult that everybody kind of has to, you know, they gotta, gotta pay your dues. The only way to really get good at it is just do it a whole bunch. So on this section, this is section D, bending, and we're not going over all of the different types of bending. This is just the basics to kind of get going. And again, if there's interest to continue to do this sort of thing, then we'll come back to it again. You have trouble with it too, Rick? Well, hopefully I can help with this. So on the first measure, I've just got uh, four quarter notes in there because just to kind of show the different types of bending. And this isn't everything. There's uh, again lots of different ways you can do this. I've been going through um, the solo for Stairway to Heaven with a private student, and there's some parts in there where some of the bending he does is just really it's like really far. So if you look on that first measure on section D, it shows we're on the ninth fret of uh, the G string, and it's got that line going up, like an arrow pointing up, and it says half. So what that's referring to is that you're going to bend the string a half step. So if we're starting here on 9, a half step away from there is there. So what we want to do is bend that note until it's that pitch. So the amount that I'm moving the string, this is probably the part that makes bending difficult. I mean, this is one of the parts I should say that really makes bending difficult, is that it isn't like other techniques where you can develop like this muscle memory of, oh, that's what this feels like, because this is going to feel different on every string and every fret. And it's also going to feel different if you're pushing the string or pulling the string. So there is a difference there, and that's why I said I wanted to be able to have some more time to kind of go over this. So let's first just look at the pitch stuff. So we're bending it to that same pitch. That's a half step bend. Now the next one says full step. So we're going to bend 9 until it sounds like 11. So it's not a thing that you get this muscle memory of where your fingers go to, although that can happen in particular keys. I mean, I guess it could happen everywhere if you played it enough, you've practiced enough. But there'll be certain keys that you play in a lot. E minor, A minor, B minor. That's a common key too. But like E minor is really really common. So I think that I could play, with earplugs in where I could not hear what I'm doing in E minor and do a bunch of bending. And I mean, it may not be perfect, but I think it'd be pretty darn close. It'd be close enough that it wouldn't be like nails on a chalkboard or whatever, because bending can be horrible. If you're trying to bend to a particular pitch and you don't make it there, you either are a little bit flat or a little bit sharp. So like if I was going to bend this note up to an E, so here's our E, it's this same pitch, but if I go, it's not in the right note. Or if I go too far, same thing. So it's a matter of, when you're working with this, part of it is it's going to be your ear. You want to be able to hear what you're doing. And it's going to be almost like this subconscious connection between your ear and your fingers, where they're going to kind of be able to. You don't do this right at first, but you'll get to where if you're playing a note as you bend up to it, you may not be thinking, oh, I'm approaching the note or whatever, but your fingers will stop when it's time after you get some experience. Okay, so we have half step bend, full step bend. Now, when I'm doing the bend itself, and this is the part where people have problems, I go over. I mean, I talk about this like practically every day of my life. with somebody. When I bend the string, if I'm just playing the scale, and then I go to bend, I don't go and then bend with my hand in the same position. When I go to bend, I end up coming around a little bit because I want to roll my fingers so I'm kind of on the side of the string instead of, you don't want to be on the top. You're not trying to, like, if, like, say my finger is the string and here's your finger, you're not trying to grab it and like drag it. You're getting on the side of it and you're pushing it. You're pushing the string. So I'm going to exaggerate this movement like extreme here because I'm not literally moving this far. But if I go and then I come around, I don't know how well you can see that, but you see I'm kind of on the edge of the string. Now, the reason I want to do that is, you see where the other strings are, like your D string? I'm actually pushing that string, but I'm not on it. I'm under it. So what that does is that it makes it so that string doesn't make noise, because this is the first problem you're going to have. You're going to go to do this, and it's going to be, you're going to hear other strings making noise. It just happens, and it's way bad. It's like virtually impossible to not do that if you're just trying to stay on top of the string. You got to get on that side. So when I go up, the D string, you can see it. It's just sitting right there on my finger, like on the tip. And then when I come back down, I'm just bringing it down, but that brings it down silently. You don't want to have it where you go to bend and then you hear that. You don't want to hear that. It's good. No matter how hard you try at first, it's going to be like that. This isn't the kind of thing that you try to do. Like, nobody should like learn how to do this like the very first thing they ever learn how to play guitar, because then no one would play because it is kind of tricky. Now, that is if you're pushing the string. When I do it, look at the shape of my hand. It doesn't change. I'm not using my fingers to push it up like this. I'm holding the string and I'm rotating my wrist. And again, I'm exaggerating this movement so you can see it. Now, you can also pull the string. It doesn't have to be pushed, but there are limitations to this. So on a string like the G string, you can push or pull, and you're not going to have a problem. Like if you're on the high E string, you have to push, because if you pull, you'll pull the string off the fretboard. Same thing on the low E string. You got to pull, you can't push, because you'll push it off. But when you get to the A and the B string, you can do, like, you can pull the B string within reason, and you can push the A string, within reason. I'm just meaning if you're only going up like a half step, or something. But if you're going to a further bend, a step and a half, 2 steps, some crazy thing like that, you wouldn't have enough room. But where on the D and the G string, you can bend just as far going either direction, literally. It is much easier to pull than it is to push. Like if you worked on trying to, like, if this is your first time bending, literally right now, pulling on it is going to be easier than pushing. You'll be able to do it better, but you can't always do that, because just like we've talked about with the other things, when you're playing, you play a note, what comes next is going to determine how you do something. So if you were bending like and you're gonna go like a really common type of lick, you would push to get it out of your way. You wouldn't want to pull it down, because if you pull, now you're in the way of that B string. So as you get more experience, you kind of figure out how to, which ones are going to work best for what. Hello, Brady. Welcome. How about using 2 fingers? Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's actually part of what we're going to be talking about here. When I bend, like, let's say I'm going to go. So I'm just following up the scales on the D string 7, 9, G string 7, 9 with the bend. I've got these other two fingers held down because one, remember we talked about when you play the scale, you want to leave that trailing finger on so that way you're ready to do a pull off or whatever. But when you go to do the bend, if I just bend with just this finger, it's hard. It's much harder. But if I put these two fingers down behind, it doesn't make any difference to the sound because it's going off of the fret above where your finger is. So by pushing with both fingers, or holding the string with both fingers rather, it gives me a lot more leverage than trying to do it with one. Now, when you're pulling, you can do with one much, much easier because we have a lot more strength and control pulling on it. But most of the time when I'm doing stuff like that, it's because it's like part of a riff, like something like that. But within soloing, I don't do that kind of bend a whole lot. Not that it isn't done, like lots of people do that, but me personally. So both fingers, and then same idea when you come this way. When you pull instead of push. All right, so half step, full step. Now, on that same measure, you can see that it shows 9 bend a half step, 9 bend a full step, and then it shows full, but it shows the arrow coming up, and then another arrow coming down, pointing to 9. So that is what is called a bend and release. So I'm bending the string, and then I'm letting it return back to that 9. That's a bend and release. Now on the other ones, you don't want like this literally would be like, that's the lick, if you wanted to call it that. That's how the measure is played. But when I do this one, you don't want to hear it come back. So I bend, and then I just touch the string with my guitar pick. So that way it's muted, because you don't want to hear it return. The only time you want to hear it return is if it's a bend and release. Now on the next measure, it's the same thing, but again, we're moving up to the B string, so that means now I'm going to be fretting the 10th fret. So again, I'm going to put these two fingers behind so I can get that leverage. I'm going to go half, full release. What? Sorry, I'm trying to decipher something on my notes here. You're a pusher? Yeah, you still can, but it gives you some more options of things, and it is a bunch easier to pull. Okay, so we've got a bend and release. You've got a bend and hold, where that might be where you're bending the note and you're holding it up and it's ringing. It would just be where you're holding it. Then we've got just on the B string as well. So again, just the examples to keep in mind that you're moving up the scale. Now, since this 6th fret here, or 8th fret, is not in the scale, it doesn't matter that my finger's on there because, again, you can't hear it, but it's just more natural to kind of first finger on a fret, second finger on the next fret, third finger on the next fret. There's going to be times where maybe you'll just use 2, just depending upon, again, what's coming next. Now, for pulling, the example I've got here, it's just on the 7th fret of the G string, and they're just quarter step. So I'm going to pull because it's easier than. If if you learned a lot of Black Sabbath riffs, there's lots of stuff where he does these little quarter step bends. So that a quarter step is the tone in between your frets. So you can't just play it to match it. You kind of have to. So there is a half step. So a quarter step's going to be in between. So it's usually kind of a thing done just to kind of put a little bit of stank on a note, like blues players do stuff like that quite a bit. Okay. Now, the next kind of bend I want to show you, because this is another one that's like pretty common. And again, there's so many different kinds. You can get into where you're bending a note, but you're playing another note with it. So you get what's called a unison bend, where you're bending that note till it sounds like that note. That's done a lot, lots and lots and lots of players and songs have that in it. But you can also get what are called interval bends, where like you might bend a note, can't get that pedal steel country kind of guitar thing going, but I think it's really awesome. It's one of my personal favorites. But a unison bend, it's pretty easy. If you've got a melody, well, I mean the concept of it is easy. Let me say it, that the execution isn't easy necessarily. Here we're in that B minor pentatonic shape. So I'm going to bend the note here on the 9th fret of the G string until it sounds like the 7th fret of the B string. So when you play them together, obviously not the same note, but as I bend, now it's the same pitch. So the idea when you see this is that you don't want to hear that unless for whatever reason that's how the song goes or something, or maybe that's what you come up with. Another thing that I don't know if I said last week either, and if I didn't, I should have, but all of these samples and things, examples that I'm showing you they aren't anything. They're not like out of like a song per se. They're just ideas. So feel free to use them, do whatever you want with them. You may end up doing something that falls outside of the pentatonic scale. It's got notes that are outside of the scale, and you can do that's what's called passing tones. Again, a subject for another day. The bottom line is don't worry about, oh, is this in the rules? The bottom line is, does it sound good when you do it? Do you think it sounds good? If you think it sounds good, it is good. All right, carry on. All right, so for this unison bend, we're just bending the 9th fret, and it's bending it up a full step, which would be there, which is the same note. So we're going to this way we can hit 2 strings. Now, if we wanted to move it up, so we were on the B and the high E string, again, the note on the B string is up a half step now. So it's 7, 9, and then 7, 9, or excuse me, 7, 10, 7, 10 on the B and high E string. So I'm going to be bending this 10 up a whole step. So it's this pitch, the same here, on the high E string. Now, when you're doing these kind of bends, this is definitely where you don't want to be trying to just doing it with one finger. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's so much easier if you put that middle finger down, because then it gives you more leverage, and so you can stay in control. Brady, vibrato, yes. We are going to talk about vibrato here in just a second. Okay, so the next thing I want to kind of do is just do an example. It's going to combine all of the things we've looked at thus far. But before we do that, does anybody have any questions about bending? I mean, we spent a few minutes there on it, but really it still wasn't enough. I mean, it's something that will be tough. If this is something that you find really, really challenging, don't, don't lose heart. It's challenging for everybody. But once you get it, it's not a big deal. It's just one of those things that doesn't come really. It isn't as easy as, like, learning how to play an A minor chord or something. I mean, it's going to be a little more challenging. B9, welcome. It's going to take as long as it's going to take, but you'll eventually get it. That's very good. We should put that on a T-shirt, because that's absolutely true. You can't gauge your progress off somebody else's. Everybody is different. Everybody is different. Uh, I was like the slowest learner that I've ever seen. The fact that I can play anything and stuck with it is absolutely a miracle. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to just do a little sequence here that is going to kind of combine everything that we've done, and it's kind of a recognizable lick. It's been done. There's like a million songs that use this exact same thing, or a bunch of variations that are all very, very, very similar. So we're going to start on the 9th fret of the G string, and we're going to bend that a full step. So we're bending it up there to that F sharp. And then we're going to take our first finger and just bar across the 7th fret of the B and the high E string. So we're going to get this bend and then 7/7 on that. And this is written as a triplet. So it's like 1 yellow, like 1, 2, 3. Now this just repeats. Well, some of the way you'll see, like, or stuff like that. So there's a million variations. But what we're going to do the bend, 7/7. Then we're going to go to the 10th fret on the B string, and we're going to pick that and pull to 7. So your first finger is already here, right? Because we barred it. Now we're going to pick that 10, pull to 7, and then end it with the 7th fret of the high E string. So you got this. That's a very, 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 very common, lick. So I go down, 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 up, whoops, up, pull, or see. Yeah, I'm going down on the bend, down, down, up, pull, and then it should be another down, logically, but it feels better for me to do an upstroke. You're old now and forgetting them. Yeah, I'm learning a hard lesson about how much harder it is to learn new things and remember them as you get older, as it is when you're younger. I have a student that it's my nephew's son, so my great nephew. God, I don't know what you would call that, but he's like 10, and he's like a sponge for this stuff. He just picks up on all the stuff, learns everything all like crazy fast. He I struggle just with just some basic thing, and then I forget how to do it, or forget, whatever. Okay, so and that's just repeated, sort of the bend. You're 42, Brady, and B9, you're 64. Well, I guess I kind of fall right in the between. I'm 52. Closer to 53 than 52, unfortunately. So there we're combining the pull off with the bending. Now, the next example for that, it's going to be kind of the same thing, but we're going to bend. That's actually, I guess, the ending for it. So what I do there, the bend 7 7 10 pull to 7, doing this basically the same thing, but then instead of just starting over again, I go to 10 on the B string, full step bend, to make it resolve. Like that. All right. So the very last thing that I want to talk about is vibrato. So there's lots of ways to skin a cat. With vibrato, there's tons and tons of different ways that you can do vibrato. One, we wouldn't have time to go over all of them. Two, I don't know all of them. I know the ones that I do, the ones that I like. I know some that I don't, that I know how to do, but I don't really use them for various reasons. There will be, just like everything else, there'll be the ones that you play that you end up gravitating to, styles, techniques, everything. Yeah, that's true to a point. But I've seen things that beg to differ that. But I think as a general rule, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Really learning anything, you're going to be able to do it if you. That's why they sent little kids to school and not old people. Wouldn't that be weird? That's how we started out. We just, like, when we were little, we just have to go to work, and then when we turn 18, we're retired, and then we have to go to school. I guess that would be completely counterproductive. But all right, so with vibrato basically is like when you think of a singer, la, they put that, where you're basically fluctuating between the correct pitch, little sharp and a little flat, and it just gives like a really nice sound. And in certain things, like in a bend, if you throw vibrato on it, it will ensure that, because like I said, if you bend a note and you hold it and you're a little flat or a little sharp, it does not sound good. But if you throw a little vibrato in there, it kind of gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Wiggle, no pun intended there with it. But the drums was one of the first things I wanted to do after I discovered rock music, but I'm like totally not coordinated enough to play the drums. Okay. Yeah, so vibrato. So there are, like I said, there's different ways that you can do it. So I just want to kind of show you some of the basic ways. So like here, I'm going to do vibrato on the 9th fret on the G string. So like, say I'm ending there, and I'm doing it in the context of the scale. So it's my third finger. So I could play that. The easiest way to really do it, and this is a kind of a way I guess you could start with, but like I said, I just don't really use this method very much. But while the note's ringing, I'm just rolling my finger back and forth. So I'm keeping press down, and my finger's like kind of rocking back and forth, lengthwise of the string. And that can give you that sound. So this is the way that I tend to do it. So what I'm doing is that instead of rolling my finger back and forth across the top of the string like this, I'm wiggling the string like a very, very tiny bend. And again, I'm using these other two fingers, so I have a lot of leverage and control on the string. So if I was now, let's say that this was the note I wanted to do the vibrato on. So again, if I'm staying in here, I'm going to use my first finger. So it's going to be basically the same idea. But now it's my first finger. So since I just have the one finger, I don't have these extra fingers for leverage. So how again, it's like my whole arm. I'm holding the string, and by rotating my arm, it's pulling the string down and letting it come back to where it naturally sits. Now, vibrato is probably the number one thing that looks way easier than it is. When you look at it, it's, oh, okay, how hard can that be? And then you go to do it, and it feels weird. It doesn't sound right. Those are just the dues that everybody has to pay. I can generally listen to somebody play, like, you know, like a student who's already been playing comes, and I listen to him play, or I go to open mic night or whatever, I hear somebody play. I can usually get a pretty good idea about how long they've been playing by how their vibrato sounds. So kind of a an analogy that I like to use for it is to think about like a baby. A baby learns how to talk, and they start saying words, and everybody teaches them how to say big words, Mississippi or encyclopedia or something. They might be able to say the word, but they sound like a baby doing it because they haven't had a lot of practice talking, so they don't have good enunciation. It's the same thing here. This is where mileage really comes in. So it's just doing it a lot. Now, it doesn't mean you just sit there and practice for 4 hours a day doing this. It just means like throwing it in whenever you can, even if it isn't supposed to be there, just so you get better at it. All right, Crit, have a good one. Okay, and we have run out of time, but I do want to go over really quick. Hello, Glenn. Welcome. That I do want to go over real quick is bending or is vibrato inside of a bend, because this is even harder. You'll get this down, but then when you want to do a bend, you try to do it, and what you'll do is nothing's changing. Usually what people have is they have too tight of a grip. So how this works is I'm going to bend the string, like so here I'm bending the 9th fret of the G string. And now I let the weight of the guitar do the work. As I'm shaking it, I'm not squeezing the neck tight. It's just resting. It's just sitting here on my hand. My thumb is just kind of helping to balance it. When I do the bend, I'm holding the string in place, and the guitar is what's kind of moving. So when you go to do this, if you're shaking but you're not getting the sound, it's just staying like that, it means you're squeezing too hard. Not that you're pressing down on the string too hard, you're holding the neck too hard. You got to try to relax. It's really weird because it's like this sweet spot of having a tight enough grip that you have control, but not so tight of a grip that you don't have control. I mean, it's a very, very, a very little fine line for this. Hello, David. Welcome. 72. I had a student for a while that was private student. He was 70. He was in his late 70s. He was near 80. And he picked it up. His wife had died, and he always wanted to learn how to play, so he got a guitar and started taking lessons. And we did a lot of John Denver and Hank Williams Sr. and stuff like that. Yeah, but the vibrato and the bend, you just gotta okay, this is the other thing I want to say with it too, is that if you don't have a hold of it, you hear how it's going down? It sounds like a balloon getting the air let out of it. You got to make sure that you are holding the string in the right place and that you're not letting it come down. So again, it's all a matter of control, and it isn't one of those things that I can like say, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. But as far as figuring out how to use those muscles, you just kind of do it on your own. It's like trying to explain. If you're going to teach somebody how to ride a bike, you put them on the bike, you get them moving, then you let go and they figure out how to balance. You can't explain to somebody what it is that you're thinking to make yourself balance. It doesn't work that way. And this is kind of the same idea. Like that. Yeah. So again, obviously this isn't, everything. This is just like a part 2. But if there's enough interest, if you guys like, if you like what we're doing here with this, let me know in the comments, and you can even do it after, if you were just tuning in, you can watch the rerun and the live stream, or the live chat obviously won't be live anymore, but you can still leave a comment on the video, saying that you'd like to see a part 3, because there's lots more things that we can do. But yeah. So that pretty much covers tonight. We went a little over, but that's all right. So does anybody have any questions about any of this we went over, or just guitar related questions in general? Oh, thank you, Glenn. I appreciate that. Jersey, thank you. Rick, thank you. Yeah. And if you like what I'm doing, it'd be super cool if you hit the thumbs up button, leave comments, think about subscribing to the channel. I'm here every Wednesday, and usually do 2 or 3 regular YouTube lessons on this channel, not live streams, I just like regular YouTube videos, a couple of times a week. Get with the band? Yeah, see, it's never too late to do that either, I don't think. You are most welcome, David. Thank you for being here. All right. Well, again, thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. If you want, like I said, if you want to see a part 3 of this, leave a comment. Let me know. Otherwise, I don't know what we'll do next week. Even if everyone wants to, I don't know if we'll do part 3 next week or not. I never know. I kind of just fly by the seat of my pants with this stuff. Oh, thank you, Shane. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, again, thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. This is still in the infancy stage. I think that this, can just keep growing. Hope it does. Hope it keeps getting to be a bigger thing, and that y'all keep coming back. But again, thanks everybody. Hope everybody has a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday.